Hey, this is Pastor Mark, and on today's episode of the podcast, I sit down with my friend Ben Edfeldt, who is the director of the Office of Collegiate and Student Ministries for the State Board of Missions, and you get to hear what God's doing throughout our state on college campuses and how you are a part of that very movement.
Welcome to the Fultondale First podcast. Our mission at Fultondale First is to love God, love people, and make disciples. And this podcast is aimed to help you join that mission. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Welcome to today's episode of the Fultondale First podcast, and I am here with Ben Edfeldt. And you don't know probably Ben Edfeldt, but you're going to get to know him today. And so I'm excited about our conversation and what God's going to do to encourage you and equip you and help you be a better partner to what God's doing around us. So Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I love the shirt, by the way.
Yeah, this was all for you.
I love it.
They just made it to the NCAA tournament.
Yes,
played in a couple days,
Yes, they did.
So there's a lot going on. Our Troy team right now is out on a spring break mission project, and so it's a lot of good things happening at Troy now.
So obviously, I like this guy already because he's wearing a Troy gear, but I like him for more than that. So Ben, you are on staff. You're a state missionary with the Alabama Baptist State Board of Missions, and you are in the world of collegiate and student ministry. So tell us a little bit about your story and what God's called you to do here.
Yeah, so I've been with Alabama for about 3 years. So I direct the Office of Collegiate and Student Ministry. So essentially that means from middle school to college, our office that's the target audience. And so we have a guy who works in our office who does a lot of equipping with our middle school and high school ministries. His name is Josh Meadows. And his primary focus is just equipping and supporting the student pastors. There's no way we can reach all the middle school, high school students by ourselves and out of our office. And so the best way to do it is to encourage and support our student pastors. So he does that. But the bulk of my time at least, is working with our campus ministers. We have 17 full-time cooperative program supported Baptist campus ministers on about 13 or 14 different campuses, not including the junior colleges that may be around their universities. And so they are all over the state. So pretty much every major public university that Alabama has, we're on. And a couple of them, we have a couple of different campus ministers that we have two on there. And so my job is to equip them, encourage them, help them reach and disciple and send more students. And the other part of my office that does mainly with collegiate is we have a One Mission Students, which is our student mobilization wing. And so we'll mobilize over the course of a year about 150, 175 or so students. That does not include all the different spring break projects that our individual BCMs are doing, but it includes about 50 or 60 at Christmas time, and usually around 100, 115 over the summer that will go from 10 days to a full summer. We offer some that do for a full semester. Don't generally have as many do that, but primarily it's summer and Christmas. And so
that's amazing.
So student ministry, campus ministry, even with that, where I need to get better at it is equipping and engaging our churches in collegiate ministry. But a lot of our time is with our BCM campus ministers, and then the sending of students, the mobilization part as well.
That's incredible. So, and the reason why I wanted Ben to come and sit down and let's have this conversation is because we literally are partners with what's going on those campuses, because you're giving, because the cooperative program that we support goes to support this. I mean, you probably had no idea that we had that many missionaries on college campuses and that many missionaries being sent, college student missionaries being sent every year. It's just amazing. So, tell us a little bit though, Ben, about how you got to where you are.
Yeah, sure.
Because you haven't always been in that role. You haven't always been here. And so tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, quickly. So I grew up all over the place. So I was a minister's kid, and graduated high school in North Georgia, in Gainesville area, and then went to a small Baptist college in Northwest Georgia called Shorter. Now it's called Shorter University. It was Shorter College back then.
I did not know you went to Shorter.
I did.
Troy's played them in basketball before.
Probably beat them. And so
we did.
And so I graduated from there. As in college, I was involved in the BCM there, and felt like the Lord was equipping me and calling me into some form of ministry. I went to Beeson Divinity School over in Birmingham. Was really important to me to be there. I enjoyed that time. The Lord really used that time, and and honestly, through the process of elimination, the Lord kind of confirmed campus ministry is what He was moving into. And so I graduated from Beeson and basically begged for jobs all over the state and not all over the country, and landed in Texas, which ironically is where I was born, was in Texas. And so it's kind of going back home. And I was in Texas for on two different campuses for about 16 years. And I was in Amarillo, Texas at the time when my predecessor, Mike Nuss, who was a friend of mine, had called me and told me that he was retiring. And this is almost 3 years ago, so 2022. He told me he was retiring and wanted me to pray about coming to take over for his role. And so the idea of I was leaving a campus where we'll talk more about what that looks like, I'm sure, but and then kind of stepping away from the campus to be somebody who sets vision for, creates pathways and plans for our campus ministries to thrive in the state. Is a completely different job. Still working with college students, but now kind of a step removed from them. But being able to help our state do that, and I came to Alabama with confidence, knowing that Alabama Baptists love collegiate ministry, and our office led by Dr. Lance has told me multiple times how much BCM is important to him, and so I knew I was stepping into a role, into a state that has a long history of loving and supporting and equipping collegiate students, and so it was real appealing to be able to step into that place and provide encouragement to our campus ministers, who are wonderful people who love students, and that was real inviting to me. So
that's awesome. Well, we're glad you're here for sure.
Very glad.
We're thankful. And so, it's funny. We were talking before we hit record, and I think every generation of people, as they age, they have a hard time sometimes connecting with younger generations. We had Larry Heish on the podcast. We talked a little bit about that, but the tendency with as you get older in generations to say, I don't understand kids these days. I don't understand the younger generation, and we lament those things. But in truth, God uses every successive generation in a unique way, and God is moving for sure among college students in college campuses, both in our state and really nationwide. So, we heard a little bit about some of the revivals the last few years, but I want you to tell us kind of what you have seen and how you've seen God work on the college campus in recent times.
Sure. Yeah. So you definitely, if you've watched news that a lot of our that people are publicizing on social media or whatever, like those things that have happened across our campus have been real encouraging, watching students respond to, whether it's revivals or just different movements. But I would say those are great, and the Lord has used them in incredible ways. But I think where I've seen the Lord move in Alabama, particularly in the area of our BCMs, has been really not these large, massive events, but in the day-to-day discipling of our students. And so, I can just give you a couple examples. So we're seeing, I think the University of Alabama, the last couple of years has graduated students. I think they have 6 or 7 or 8 students who have now committed to go to do journeyman. Wow. And so, like, these are not, and they've been a part of the BCM where they are been discipled, learning how to share the gospel on their campus, going on mission, hearing about God's heart for the nations, and the response has been, "Hey, I don't think the Lord is done with me in this season yet, and so let me figure out what's next." And so
they're committing to 2 years,
2 more years of serving around the world. And so, and who knows what will come from that? It'll either be long full-time ministry internationally on missions, or just coming back to the secular environment, but having that experience will absolutely shape how they lead in the future. I think about what's happening at West Alabama, one of our smallest schools where we're working, where about 3 years ago, we had a long time between campus ministers. And so that ministry wasn't exactly dormant, but it was pretty much non-existent. By the time our new campus minister got there, and within 3 years, last semester alone had 14 students coming to Christ.
That's amazing.
And really, it just took being in the presence of students and engaging them and sharing gospel with them and such. I think about story after story I hear every week of students who are being broken for the lostness on their campus and going onto their campus to share gospel. Matt Daniels up in North Alabama has told multiple stories about students who were burdened for their students, and now they're taking. Matt is naturally going on campus sharing gospel. That's just who he is, but he's led his students to do that, and so now he would tell you that most of their evangelistic outreaches on the campuses are now student led and student initiated, and which is what you want.
That's right.
Right? Like
That's
you
right.
want students to recognize, hey, I'm feeling burdened to this, and I'm going to go do this relationally one to one. The large group environments are great and they're wonderful, and the Lord uses them in mighty ways. But I think statistically, the way we're going to reach and change the world is one to one.
That's right.
And then not just one to one, but one to one to one, like teaching that person to share the gospel with the next person. You know, that the multiplication effect. That's a far greater impact on their campuses, in our churches, and around the world than the one large rally. You know, and so
Absolutely.
We're watching that happen across the board. Again, I can tell more stories. Like AUM, same way. Like where we're just seeing students who are being burdened for and engaging their students sharing the gospel.
And really, AUM's another story. I feel like, at least, that was dormant, almost dead. I mean, almost non-existent.
Right.
When the the college BCM director got on campus, it was a very difficult start. But man, is God doing something.
Yeah. So I mean, a little bit where the current guy that's there now, when there's a leadership change, his predecessor led a pretty vibrant ministry,
Right.
and he left to go work in a local church, and then COVID hit, and so like it was just kind of a perfect storm of a lot of things. So you have a young leader figuring out how to do ministry on the campus, COVID coming, and so there's a difficult transition, but that young leader stuck with it, figured it out, and is starting to see some fruit from that, you know.
That's
and
awesome.
So I just think you just see. I mean, you can see story after story of the Lord moving on our campuses, and I think the collegiate generation is the most trainable and sendable generation that there is. And so, do they have their warts? Do they have challenges? Of course, and I'm sure Larry talked a little bit about that when we talk about next gen stuff. But but I would say they are hungry to go. They're hungry to do something, and the season of their life enables them to do some things that now, as a paid nearly 45-year-old minister, I can't do anymore.
Right.
You know, but as a college student, we can do some things with them that are pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Well, I will concur and agree with everything you said. I have an honor and privilege to be down in Prattville at our State Board of Missions every month for our staff meeting as a part-time state missionary, and so I get to hear those stories.
Yeah.
And I hear stories from, like you mentioned, West Alabama, from University of North Alabama, from Jack State recently, from and that's some cool stuff that God's doing with a new campus minister there.
Yeah.
And, Alabama and Auburn, both, God doing some things there. I hear, of course, stories on Troy's campus just because I'm connected with Troy, but I mean, really all over. AUM is another one. Alabama State, Tuskegee. I've heard stories recently from those campuses.
Right. Well, and A&M is having it's another one of those stories of a difficult transition between leaders. COVID really did a number on that school. We brought in a new leader who again, not a completely dead ministry, but
Sure.
not doing well because of just COVID stuff. And now they, oh, I don't remember what his numbers are now, but like when they do the worship, they do 2 large group worships a month and have over 200 that are there.
That's
And then a
amazing.
weekly Bible study that's pushing 100, you know,
Wow.
and so and students getting saved, students
Mm.
now exploring ministry. We were at Pursue
Yep.
a couple weeks ago, and we had nearly, when you include leaders, about 400 people there. Almost a quarter of them were African Americans,
Hmm.
which I think is just a glimpse of what heaven's going to be like,
That's right.
you know. And so and that's just a testimony to what's happening on our HBCU campuses, but also just kind of what's happening on our other campuses
Yeah.
as well. And I'm just really grateful for that too.
Oh man,
So
it's so encouraging to see.
mhm.
So encouraging to see. Um, because I mean, our culture,
Yeah,
the world we live in, the racial divide, all those things.
sure,
It's awesome to see the diverse mix, like you said, is a slice of heaven, at an event like that, and certainly among college campuses.
yeah,
And man, I'm just so encouraged. And every time I hear a story, I'm just further encouraged and kind of motivated to, okay, what else can we do? And so, let me ask this question: wh- What do you see? Maybe some common threads among what God is doing on campuses? Because we've got lots of different campuses. You mentioned, 17 um, staff on 13, 14 different campuses plus junior colleges and
hmm
community colleges. So what are some common threads that you see in those campuses where God is working? You mentioned a little bit about that, one-to-one kind of thing, but what are
sure,
some of the common threads that you've seen?
yeah. So I think sometimes the temptation that campus ministries have, maybe perhaps churches have, I don't know that I can speak to that with authority, but is that we have this temptation to be a come and see type ministry, right? And but that's not how BCMs are designed. Like Alabama Baptists have called out 17 full-time missionaries to be on that campus and to engage those engaged students there. And our universities are, I think, again, what season of your life do you have thousands of students condensed into one place who are making life changing decisions, career decisions, relational decisions, habits, and such? And it's not a secret. Like, you go on the campus and you're going to see. When I talk to people who are interested in doing campus ministry, one of the first things I say is you have to have the ability and skill within 30 minutes to have a conversation with a student who's transitioning gender, who's wrestling with sexual identity, who may be deconstructing their faith, to a student who is ready to run through the walls for the Lord. Like, you have to be able to shift in those conversations,
Yeah.
and those are normal things. You talk
Every
about
day on campus.
you talked about one of our campuses with a newer campus minister there, and she said, we've got a student who's wrestling with some sexual identity who's kind of coming to our ministry,
Mm.
and we're learning how to administer to that student. And that's not just one campus; that's almost all of our
Yeah.
campuses. And so those are things that are happening every day, and we and that's what Alabama Baptist has called these BCM campus ministers to go do. And so the temptation is, when we have a come and see mindset, is, hey, we're just going to kind of focus in on, hey, we're going to be a safe place for Christians to come to, and we're going to create community, we're going to have fun, and we're going to do things like that. Man, I think fellowship is great. Goofing off, having a good time, provides value, but that's not what BCMs are designed to be.
That's right.
And so when our campus ministers make it a priority, we talk about this as a staff. Like, our priority is this: we want to see the lost saved, saved discipled, and discipled sent.
Mm.
And developing leaders kind of is woven between all of those three, you know. And so when our campus ministries begin to focus on how do we aggressively share the gospel on campus, and I don't mean like loud, obnoxious ways,
Right.
but like, how do we get on campus assertively to let people know that they need to know about Jesus and following Jesus and such. We believe there's not a proven stat that says this, but like, we believe that about 90% of our campuses are filled with students who do not actively engage in a Christian ministry or local church. So I would say, Mark, that at best, that 90% is not being obedient to the Lord. But more than likely, they don't know the Lord. Because if you have a growing relationship with Christ, you're going to want to be in community with people.
That's right.
And you're going to want to follow him and obey him and do all those things. And if 90% of our campuses aren't doing that, that tells me that the bulk of that 90% don't know the Lord. Yeah. And so why do we go after the 10%?
Right.
Let's go after the 90%.
That's right.
And so let's equip the 10% to go after the 90%. And so our BCMs are designed to go after the 90%. And so then we take those students who do have a relationship with the Lord, or the students who have decided to follow Jesus, and disciple them. And then I think a natural outworking of proper discipleship is a heart for the nations. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to move to the ends of the earth, but it means you're going to be concerned about it. You're going to pray about it. You're going to give towards that end, and you're going to take advantage of opportunities to go. And so I think if our students are genuinely following the Lord, they're going to say, well, how do this 3 billion people around the world who don't know Jesus, like, how do I help them know Jesus? Right. And so that's what our BCMs exist. So you ask, what's the common thread about movements of God on our campus? I think it's when BCMs say, hey, we're going to be about going after lost students. We're going to be about mobilizing multiplication, like teaching students how to know the Lord, share the gospel, and disciple that student, and then keeping it going. And then about going to the nations, having a biblical worldview in that way. And I think, we don't kill it in all of those areas all the time, but that's our aim, and that's what we're going to go about, and we're not going to deviate from that. And then when we do deviate from that, then we have to have a kind of a moment of like just kind of recentering of what
clarity
of what we're supposed to be about.
That's awesome. And as Ben's talking, this probably sounds familiar to you because we talk about these same things in our church, and that it's not just college campuses. I mean, what you're talking about is the way the church operates or should operate from the New Testament. And our theme at Fultondale First is one more. And so we're leaving the 99 to go after one more. We're putting all of our resources in reaching that one more that doesn't yet know Christ, and then discipling them so that they can find one more. And that's exactly what God's doing on our college campuses. And so that's exciting to hear. So I guess I'll kind of finish off with this question, Ben. We obviously give, and that's one way we can help. But what are ways that we can get involved with what God is doing? How can we be even more of a partner, be even a bigger part of what God is doing on these college campuses?
Yeah. So I think there's multiple types of answers to that question. So I'll try to hit them all.
Sure.
And if I get disorganized, you can help me come back. So first, let me say thank you, one, for connecting with Alabama Baptist, cooperating with us as seen through the cooperative program. It enables us to allow our campus ministers to be fully focused on reaching students. I think it's the BCMs are one of the unique things that Alabama Baptists do, where it is fully dependent on and fully has a great relationship with the local churches. But these are actual, when we think about sending missionaries around the world, we need to be thinking in the same vein about sending our campus ministers to the campuses. And so these are 17 on the ground frontline missionaries that your gifts to the cooperative program enable them to do that. And then I can't remember what association are you guys a part of? Birmingham. So your gifts to the Birmingham Baptist Association enable us to do ministry at UAB. And so those things should not be forgotten, and I want to say thank you for that. So a couple things. I would say practically, one, there are definite ways to connect with the UAB BCM, and I think those are things that I don't necessarily I can give specific examples because I'm not the campus minister at UAB. Bill and Craig could talk about that, but being present on the campus, presence is so important, right? And so we can give and give and give, and that's great, but at some point the power of presence is also has to be considered. And so figuring out ways to say, hey, Bill, how can we help you reach students? And I know Bill loves to partner with churches,
Yeah.
and has partnered with you guys at times in the past. And so maybe there's a specific people group on campus that you guys can partner with in specific ways, and working with Bill in that way. I don't want to overlook how important it is just to be praying for us. We've been so grateful for the partnership we've created with the Alabama WU. And every Wednesday, if you go on their website, you can sign up for an email prompt to pray specifically for a campus, and there'll be a video and a couple ways to pray for them. I think today Montevallo's is coming out, and then and so there's just some really great. That's just a great way to partner with us. I don't want to overstate how important prayer is there. So that, I think the other thing though, Mark, that I would say is, you have students in your church, or future students in your church, and so don't neglect them. Go find ways to encourage them, support them, equip them. This is a much longer conversation, but what I find concerning sometimes about, and I'm a parent of a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old and an almost 13-year-old, so I'm living this at the moment, right? So often we parent or disciple our kids in a defensive posture. So like, okay, you need to know these things because the world is bad. The world's going to come and get you, and we need to give them these tools in order to defend their faith, right? And those aren't unimportant, right? But I think if we can somehow shift the way we disciple our kids into being more offensive rather than defensive. So sending your student to a college, university, where yes, you've got professors and ideologies on that campus that are not biblical, 100%.
Right.
But if we send them not fearful about what the world's going to do to them, but equip them to go into the lost void, if you will, with the light of Jesus, to share the gospel there.
Yep.
And I think we set our students up for much greater success if we give them, if we empower them, we disciple them to say, hey, as you're thinking about the college that you're going to go to, yes, major is important, maybe proximity, cost for sure is important, but also think about where the Lord's calling you to go and be a missionary there.
Yeah, it's the missionary mindset. Absolutely.
100%. And so I think when we disciple and we live out our Christian faith from a defensive posture, it is rarely successful. But we live out our faith in Jesus in an offensive way. I think that's actually more reflective of how Jesus lived and what Jesus would ask us to do. Go and make disciples. That's not a sit back and wait, or sit back and huddle up and say, we're just going to endure all the criticism the world has towards us. No, go into that. It's messy and it's hard. Yeah. And I think, yes, there are great specific ways to partner with UAB, maybe in the other BCMs around the state. But the best way, I think, to partner with us is to begin to disciple your kids. Parents, disciple your kids in this way. Church, disciple your kids in this way, where you're equipping them to be in the middle of lostness and be a difference maker, and not in a place where we just have to always have our guard up, right? And I think you can do both. Sure. But we focus on we don't want our kids to fail. We don't want our kids to fail, and so it's this very defensive posture. You can't go there because they're just really bad people. Well, that's where the lostness is, and they need to hear the gospel.
That's right.
And Jesus. I can't remember, somebody said this, they would rather be 5 feet from the gates of hell sharing the gospel, and that's a really terrible synopsis of what that person said, but I love that imagery.
Yeah.
That's where God asks us to be light and dark.
That's right.
And so equipping our students to not be defensive, but to be offensive, to go and be assertive and develop relationships that are intentional and strategic.
That's great. Support. I've heard it said that, they talk about the gates of hell shall not overcome, the church that Jesus builds. Gates are not offensive, they're defensive. Mm-hmm. So the implication is we should be offensive.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love that mentality. And so that's an encouragement. And I think that gives us something to not just think and consider, but that gives us something to do.
Yeah.
Those are action steps that we can take as a church. And whether you have students or children or grandchildren or anywhere in between, that's something we can do to mentor and invest in a disciple the next generation to be on mission when they leave our houses and our homes and go to campuses or wherever God calls them. I think that's certainly an act of obedience for all of us. So, Ben, thank you so much
Of course. Thank
for
you.
sharing a little bit, for sitting down, for coming all the way up to Birmingham and fighting the traffic.
Oh, yeah.
But we appreciate you. We're thankful for what you do and for what every single college minister does and missionary that we partner with on college campuses. We're so thankful, and we appreciate you. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Help us spread the word about the podcast by sharing on socials too. Thanks again, and we'll see you next episode.